Okay, we're going to go through some of the problems on the review worksheet for the test on Wednesday. So this is Unit 9, and we're going to do some of the identity problems. So first couple notes about identities. Remember that you want to look for the harder side. You want to make the harder side more simple, and normally that is the left side, but not always. So if I look through these problems, between this first one, the left and the right, the left is more complicated, so that's the side I want to simplify and leave the right side alone. Same thing here. This is definitely more complicated than 1. So this is the side that I'm going to be messing with to try to equal to 1. Number 3, anytime you have addition or subtraction, that's typically more complicated, but in this case, definitely my right side is 1. My left side is this. This is the side that I'm going to be substituting things in and trying to get to equal 1. Again, this one, things that are multiplied are more simple than this. So this is the side I'm going to try to simplify. Now, look at number 5. Here's my left side. But my left side is definitely more simple than my right side. So in this case, I'm going to try to simplify the right side and get it to equal the left side. And again, it's because I have addition here. It's much more complicated. It's easier to make complicated things become easy than to make the easier things become complicated. So in this problem, you actually want to do the right side. Number 6, definitely the left side is more complicated. So just a tip on which side to work on. There isn't one correct way to do this. You can do it different ways. Some tips. Look for things that are squared with 1s, and then look at your Pythagorean identities. So anytime you see something squared with a 1, that's a good hint. Don't forget also sine squared plus cosine squared is 1. Make sure you guys are looking at the right side to see what it is you're trying to go to. So for this problem, I'm trying to get to sine cosine. So I definitely want to turn these tangents into sine and cosine. Versus problem 6, where I'm trying to get to tangent. So make sure you know what it is you're trying to get to at the end. If you see addition and subtraction, like here, getting a common denominator is a good idea. Or here, factoring, you might need to factor. So let's see if we have any factoring type problems. There may be some after that need to be factored, but all right, so let's start. Let's start with number 1. So again, we said every time you see something squared with a 1, you need to look at your Pythagorean identities. In this case, I have secant squared x minus 1. That is the same thing as tangent squared x. All right, and again, we're just messing with the left side. We're not doing anything with the right side. So in this case, I want to get to sine squared, so my next step here is going to be turning everything into sine and cosine. So tangent is sine squared over cosine squared, and secant is 1 over cosine squared. So I'm dividing 2 fractions, so I keep the first fraction the same, flip the second and turn it to multiplication. And now I see I can cancel some stuff. I can cancel my cosine, and I end up with sine squared, which is exactly what I wanted to have. All right, let's try another one. Let's try number 5, because it just looks messy, and we're doing the right side. So number 5. Again, the reason I'm doing the right side is it is more complicated than the left. It's easier to go from more complicated to less. So this one I see I'm adding. So my first step is probably, let's get a common denominator. So in this case, my common denominator is going to be cosecant x minus 1 times cosecant x plus 1, which means that this fraction here is missing the cosecant x minus 1. And this one over here is missing cosecant x plus 1. All right. Hopefully you recognize this too. When I multiply these together, this is the difference of squares, which means my common denominator is cosecant squared x minus 1. So this one up here, sine times cosecant is just 1. 1 times sine x is sine x. Sine x times cosecant is just 1, and sine x times negative 1 is negative sine x. So the sine x and the negative sine x cancel. 1 plus 1 is 2. And again, I see that I have something squared with a 1, so I'm going to look at my Pythagorean identities. That's cotangent squared. And we know I'm trying to get to tangent squared, and this is the reciprocal. So I can move it up. Oops. I don't want to move it up as cotangent. That would be some wrong math there. Right, when we move it up, it becomes tangent. And that's what I want. I want it to be 2 tangent squared x. So I'm done. All right, let's try one more. Let's try one maybe on the back. All right, so let's look at number 7. Again, my left side is more complicated than my right, so I'm going to leave the right side alone. I want to get the left side to equal the right side. So I can see I'm going to cosine and sine. So I'm going to change everything to cosine and sine. So cotangent is cosine over sine. Tangent is sine over cosine. On the bottom, again, cotangent is cosine over sine. And tangent is sine over, oops, this is plus, cosine. So now I'm going to get a common denominator for the top, and then I'm going to do the same thing for the bottom. So my common denominator for the top would be sine times cosine. So this one is missing the sine, and this one is missing cosine. So I get, for the top, cosine squared x minus sine squared x over sine x cosine x. And then the bottom, I'm going to do the same thing. And my common denominator is also sine cosine. So this one's missing sine x. And this one is missing cosine x. So again, this gives me cosine squared x plus sine squared x. And my common denominator was sine x cosine x. All right, so right away, this is gone, right? We know cosine squared plus sine squared is 1. And then I'm going to make this look a little neater by multiplying it out. So cosine squared x minus sine squared x over sine x cosine x. We're going to change it to multiplication, flip it, and then I can see those cancel, and I'm left with cosine squared x minus sine squared x, which is exactly what I wanted to end up with. So again, when you're doing these, there's more than one way to do them. You could have done it differently than me, but couple just things to look for. Look for your Pythagorean identities. Look for things squared with a 1. If you're stuck at where to go and you see you're adding or subtracting, find a common denominator. Or maybe you see you could factor something. Look at what you're trying to get to, and that will help you decide, do I want to change everything to sine cosine? Do I want things in terms of tangent? So hopefully that helps a little bit.